And now, without further delay, let's get into my interview with Castle Grok. Welcome back to the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show with Jimmy Moore. And today I am so pleased to welcome to the podcast, well, I really don't know what to call him, but I'm going to call him a Castle Grok, because that's what he goes by on his website, Chronicles of a Modern Caveman. And you can check out his website, coach2ultra.com. What's that?
Couch.
Oh, I'm sorry. I said coach, didn't I? Couch. That's right. Couch to ultra. I get it now. Couch potato to ultra marathoner. Yes, I get it. Couch to ultra.com, and he is a 31-year-old man who uses food to bring himself back from undiagnosed death during his mid-20s. We'll have him tell us all about that here in a minute. And now with his dietary blinders off, he's been traveling from one end of the dietary spectrum to the other in the pursuit of the perfect and most sustainable way to live, and trying to find that healthy relationship with food. We're all for people finding what works for them, and Castle Grok, it sounds like you've done that. Welcome to the show.
Howdy, Jimmy.
or you're doing that, I suppose. So
yeah, I'm doing it. You know, it's a constant process. You can't stick with one thing for too long.
Sure. so let's back up to the mid-20s and this undiagnosed death thing. What's that all about?
Okay, so I got really, really sick in my mid-20s because of my horrible, horrible diet. And, I mean, we're talking, my diet consisted of eating sugar, like actual sugar from a bag.
Wow.
That's how bad it was. So anyway, I got really sick, and, you know, I got into energy drinks and all that stuff like everybody else. And I could barely hold a job. You know, I had IBS issues, and I was on 4 kinds of steroids, and I don't know, I carried around a pocket full of pills with me pretty much, well, all the time, because I wasn't sure if I was going to live if I didn't have my pills on tap. So went to the doctor, got all the blood work done. They told me I was healthy as a horse and there was nothing wrong with me. And I'm like, I just couldn't figure out how that could be, because I'm sitting in the little room there with the doctor, and I'm in like a cold sweat.
Yeah.
Just I feel so horrible. And so I just didn't accept that. And never has anybody ever mentioned diet to me as maybe being a problem for, you know, how I was feeling. And so I just kind of, I wanted to do an Ironman, and there was no way I was going to do that because of all the inflammation in my body. I literally couldn't do a body squat because my knees were so bad. And so I read Michael Pollan's book, and I had started eating a little bit cleaner, you know, the lots and lots of oatmeal and, you know, stuff like that. Typical food pyramid type stuff. And I wasn't really getting that much better. I read Michael Pollan's book, and he says, you know, eat real food. And that was kind of a strange concept to me at first. I didn't realize what he meant. And of course he expands on that in the book. And, you know, I just kind of started getting into nutrition from there, and just started noticing the improvements in my body. And it's like, holy crap, you know, this really does work. And next thing you know, I'm off the meds. My knees aren't hurting anymore. And, you know, then I'm kind of where I am now, where it's just, I do whatever the hell I want. I can go out and exercise for as long as I want, as hard as I want. And, you know, everything's good. No problems.
Yeah.
I haven't even had aspirin for 2 years.
Wow. So what exactly did you do to heal yourself? Because you said you figured out the right way to eat, but what was that for you?
Okay, so the first thing was first, I kind of just cleaned out a lot of the crap and was doing a very high grain kind of diet. There's still some processed stuff in there, but it was a lot cleaner. I would say my dirtier stuff would be more like cans of chili, which I guess if you look at the ingredient list, they're not really that great. But, right. I was doing a little bit of rice back then, and I was doing some salads and stuff too. So it was fairly clean. And then I kind of got introduced to the paleo diet through Twitter. It was when Mark's Daily Apple was still like the old site,
yeah.
The big cartoon character of Mark on it and stuff. And I kind of started dabbling into that a little bit, and it really I really started feeling a lot better. My knees weren't real good when I was still on the high grain diet. It just they like I have a handful of gravel in each one of them, just crunch, so I can't run. I mean, I couldn't even really ride a bike, it's so I got into the paleo diet, and I noticed that things were starting to clear up, and then I started with that increasingly going lower carb. And I thought that was my saving grace for a while, because I improved so much, and that's actually where I got off the meds and things like that. And then it just stopped working. I didn't get any better. And that's when I kind of started to think about, I was reintroducing carbs back in, post-workout, still wasn't working. And so I was like, you know what, maybe I'll kind of see what this vegan thing's all about, because there's some really good vegan athletes. And the main reason I was, attracted to that was because of their recovery. Their exercise recovery is incredible.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, well, I'll do this. So when I first started the vegan thing, it was a high fat. Basically, it was paleo diet.
Right.
Minus animal products.
Right.
It was, everything was kind of, fried or sauteed or whatever you want to call it in different kinds of fats, olive oils and coconut oils. And I did that, and my knees actually improved a ton, even though I wasn't, I stopped the fish oils and things like that. I was like, wow, I might really be onto something here. And so I thought, well, I'll try the raw food thing, because, the raw food is to do even better. Yeah. So I tried to do that, but I made the mistake of going into more of a vegetable-based raw food diet.
Yep.
And that's not the way to do it. And I hadn't looked around to see how to do it. I just was basically going to take my cooked diet and just eat it raw.
Right.
In a nutshell. And eating lots of stuff like broccoli and carrots and things like that, it's not the easiest on your digestion when it's raw. And you can't get enough calories from that, period. So it just doesn't work very well. I was on a lot of probiotics and stuff when I was trying to do that, and it wasn't very good. So I transitioned back to kind of what I knew. And then I kind of started looking into durian rider stuff, the fruit. And I basically kind of just stole the concepts that whole crowd uses, basing the calories from fruit instead of from, animal products or fats, and then keeping the vegetables and stuff in there. I actually probably do most of my vegetables cooked now, except with the exception of, carrot sticks and things like that. I'll eat some of those, but for the most part, I probably stir fry most of my vegetables, just because, I don't know, it's just easier to digest, and I'm all about easy digestion anymore. And so, largely based on fruit. Still do as many vegetables as I can. The vegetable selection here where I'm at in Hawaii is not good. They're really, really expensive. I mean, it's like $3.50 for a head of lettuce here.
Wow.
And, everything is $4.50 a pound. And it's just, so I get as many in as I can, and I probably should spend more money on food, but the fruit here is pretty cheap. So I shouldn't say all of it. It's the bananas and the papayas can be had pretty cheap. The rest of the stuff is still really expensive. Mangoes are more expensive here on the mainland, and you can ride your bike past the mango tree all the time. So,
Yeah.
So I don't understand it.
I know when I contacted you for an interview, you said, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, I want to talk to you. I want to see what your philosophy on diet's all about. And,
yeah.
Well, I'm sitting here with my belly full of papayas.
Yeah. I've been known to eat, in upwards of probably 16 of them at a time.
Wow.
And they're bigger than the ones on the mainland.
Yeah.
And they taste a whole lot better too.
I don't think I've ever had a papaya in my life pre Atkins low carb. And even now, I've just never had one.
Oh man, you're missing out. They're not. I mean, they're sweet, but they're not that sweet.
Right.
It's not like a banana or mango sweetness. They're real high water content.
Right.
And if you want to move something out of your belly,
that'll do it.
Eat papayas. Whatever you got in there that you want out. If you went and binged on a pizza the night before,
yeah,
you eat those papayas, and they say we're taking over this space and whatever else.
Yeah.
Not in a violent, bad way, but in a good way.
So do you know how many carbs are in a papaya?
I think it's, gosh, I want to say like 30 or something. Yeah. I honestly don't know because I don't care anymore.
Yeah. I just, for curiosity's sake, because I know a banana has 29 grams of sugar per banana. I had never seen and never wanted to look it up on papaya. Well, I might try it someday, just in your honor.
I think there was something talking about 30 bananas a day one time, and everybody's like, "Oh, you gotta eat 30 bananas a day." And it's like, no, if you want, it can be 20 papayas a day. So I think papayas might actually have more than bananas because it was 20 papayas versus 30 bananas for 3,000 calories. So
yeah. Or when I interviewed Durian Rider, he says he likes to have a lot of dates. In fact, he'll make a smoothie out of dates, and he calls it Datorade.
Yeah, I've had a Datorade. I love dates. I'd probably eat more dates than Durian Rider.
Yeah, wow.
I lived right outside of Yuma County, and it's right down there by Bard Valley. Yeah. And Bard Valley is the hub of the date growing in California. And so I could ride my bike 25 miles and be right in basically a date forest. I mean, you're in these fields with these date trees, and I had a little farmer guy there, and I used to go BS with him and stuff. And he was an organic farmer. He just hadn't filled out all the paperwork to be certified organic. But we'd sit there on his porch and eat dates and whatever kind of oranges and stuff he had around there. And he couldn't believe that I was riding my bike 25 miles out to his place with a trailer so I could haul down home boxes of dates.
You sound just like Durian Rider.
Yep.
He does some of the same things.
Yep. Bicycle with a bob trailer behind it.
Funny. That is so funny. Now, you have a great philosophy when it comes to trying to figure out this whole nutritional thing because you've been on a journey. Your whole life, and albeit it's only been 30 some odd years, but it's something that you feel like was important enough you needed to explore, which unfortunately not enough people are doing. And I think when you stop the pursuit of the journey is when you stop learning and things can start to decline in your health and even in your mental capacity towards food. I think that's where we kind of get off course sometimes is people think, oh, I have to stay to these strict guidelines or I'm bad and my health be damned. So
and the personality that attracts, a health food type mentality, that happens a lot too because they don't have a healthy relationship with food necessarily. They're, orthorexic or whatever. Yeah. And it happens a lot.
And I'm glad you brought up orthorexia because that is something that's kind of gaining more and more with people that having purist mentalities, thinking they have to stick to a strict guidelines of what to eat and what not to eat. And unfortunately, that's just as bad as having a crappy diet and eating it willingly.
Yeah. I don't know if I'm totally on board with the 80-20 thing, right? But I kind of like that concept where if it's also unhealthy to say go into a social situation and not do what everybody else is kind of doing. Yeah. And it's it's only a couple times a year or whatever. I mean, if you're doing it a couple times a week, that's obviously not good. But I mean, if it's every once in a while, if it's Christmas dinner or whatever, I mean, should you really be stressing about that too much? Maybe it kind of ruins your day. And then the next day you're like, oh crap, I eat pie and oh no, and you're bagging on yourself and you're fasting and starving and, and it just kind of a vicious cycle. It's like, do what you're going to do that day, forget about it. And tomorrow is right back into what you do normally, eating your clean foods and whatever.
Yeah, so, I wonder how much that cortisol impact of stressing about it has a greater impact than if you just ate the food and didn't worry about it and got right back on plan the next day.
Exactly. I was on the paleo diet. I'd do these, go to Christmas or Thanksgiving or something, and I would, I'm just going to eat paleo today. I'm not going to, do anything else. And so I would eat, and the next thing I know, I've eaten 4 pounds of turkey and, I don't know how many heads of cauli mash and, all this stuff. And 4 hours later, everybody else, they ate all the junk food, they're all passed out on the couch and everything. And I'm just sitting there foaming at the mouth, and I've eaten 9,000 calories of paleo food, and I can still smell the pie, and I can still smell the cookies, and and it's just a matter of time before chewing through the stuff.
well, and I hear you on that. Although the flip side of that is a lot of us who've been eating this way for a little while, we don't have quite those cravings anymore, even though the smell's in the air. Yes, the smell's there, but it's not quite as enticing as it was when we were so hooked on the sugary and the floury carbs.
And the people I think that probably have the best luck with that are the ones that are a lot more satiated by fats.
Right.
And I can drink butter and it will not satiate me.
Really?
Ever. Yeah.
How about that?
I'm not kidding, Jimmy. At one of my old jobs, I used to eat sticks of butter.
Wow. What job was that?
I ran a Mac store.
Ah.
So yeah, they were just like, geez. And I was like, I'm on the paleo diet, man. Eat my fats.
Crazy. So how would you describe your diet now? Would you call it fruitarian?
No, not at all. I would just say it's fruit based, and that's really the only kind of thing to it. I mean, I get most of my calories from fruit.
Yeah.
And then I'll eat, sometimes I go on like vegan stretches. Most of the time they're not any longer than 2 weeks. And I've kind of come to the conclusion that's probably because when I'm on those vegan periods, my output is so high because I can recover so quickly that I exercise. I overtrain when it comes down to it. And so after about 2 weeks or so, I will kind of start craving, I think, more calorie dense foods. And if I kept more dates around, I could really kind of curb that, I think. But it ends up coming back to, I'm really feeling like some fish.
Yeah.
So I'll go get 1.5 pounds or so of poke, raw tuna at the store and motor through that. And then, the next day, then I feel like a slug the next day. So it's like, but I think it's important. There's a lot of nutrition in that stuff too. So it's not something that I sweat about. I'm not trying to be a vegan or a fruitarian or anything like that. That's just kind of silly to me.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of listening to my body. And obviously it may need those calories at that point in time. So give it to them.
Yeah. Well, and you're also at the age where things start to change because you've had this, killer metabolism through your late 20s since you've made these changes that brought you back from the brink of death, according to you. And so, now you're starting to enter into where by the time you get to your mid-30s, early 40s, things might change where perhaps this journey that you're on now will have to transition back to more of a meat-based paleo.
Nah, that I'm not, because I'll tell you why.
Yeah?
It's always a super high carb person, just because, when I was little, or up until basically I was about 25, I didn't really care what I ate. Right. There was no carbs, there was no fats, it was food, and it was junk food at that. And I was always super, super high carb, just because that's what I wanted.
Right.
And I never really was into the meat stuff. And, then when I kind of started cleaning up my diet, I started thinking about the food more. It's back to this kind of orthorexic mentality. And I started thinking, reading studies and, I need this and I need this and I need this. And I kind of went off of what I would probably naturally eat. And so now where I've come back, I don't think about food anymore. I mean, if I'm feeling down, I just eat a whole bunch of carbohydrates from fruit, and it's whoop, and I'm right back up, and I'm juiced up again, feeling happy. So it's just, I eat based on the way I feel and the way I want to feel now. And if anything, my metabolism's speeding up. Right. There was times, when I was on the paleo diet, I was eating huge meals, and it was because I couldn't be satiated without the carbs. And
that is so wild. Yeah. I can't wrap my head around that you don't get satiated with fat, but carbohydrates make you satiated?
Yeah. You come to Hawaii, I'll show you.
Oh, I believe you. I totally believe you. And you prove the point that I talk about quite often, that we all, have different individualized nutritional needs, and that for one person, one dietary regimen may work for them, but you put it on somebody like you and the exact opposite, it's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't do bad on the paleo diet when I was eating lots of fats and stuff. I just wasn't where I could be. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was still way healthier than anybody around me. My energy levels weren't very good, but it was, and that's a relative term. If you're just kind of clunking around at a desk all day, I would say the energy levels were normal, but I don't want to be like that. I want to live life to the max, and now I want to do these, ultra endurance things, and that just doesn't work.
Yeah. So from an athlete's perspective, that's where you're looking at this from. And I know that's Durian Rider's thing too, is, eat 30 bananas a day at least, because when you're an endurance athlete, you need that. But, do you acknowledge that there are some people who do well and need to be eating a low carb diet?
Yeah. And I would say that most of those people are plus 50 males.
Really?
Yeah, that's the people that I see that do the best on that type of diet.
So the Art Devaney's.
Yeah, there you go. And hey, Richard Nicolay, and you, and
well, I'm not 50, buddy. I'm still in my 30s.
Oh, come on, Jimmy. I'm just kidding. And Mark Sisson, and my dad and my girlfriend's dad, and all those people. They really kind of like that low carb style kind of eating, and that's the way they sort of naturally gravitate to. So it's not so hard to put those people on that kind of diet, because that's kind of the way they want to eat anyway. And so you just say, okay, we're going to take the crap out, and this is the way you eat. And they're like, oh, well, I can eat steak and salads with salsa on them. And I'm like, oh, okay, that works.
What do you think is the attraction to that diet for an older male?
I don't have the foggiest clue. I don't want to speculate.
Wait till you turn 50, and then you'll know. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a way for them to unwind. They get all that fat in them, and it kind of bogs them down or whatever, and they just unwind from their day better. I don't know.
Bogs them down. You're getting about as bad as Durian Rider, but I guess that's a compliment in your eyes.
Yeah, I've been there and done that. So I mean, it's just. I got Twitter questions coming through here too, so I'll have to read them.
So I saw a post on your blog as of the recording of this. You had another one, Bites the Dust. My buddy Hank Garner had you on his podcast a few months back, and at the time it was called My Low Carb Journey, and he's since changed it to Hank's Journey. And so you kind of joked that you're working on me to change mine to the Jimmy Moore Show rather than the Livin' La Vida Low Carb Show. This show is called Livin' La Vida Low Carb, but that we talk about all kind of stuff with a low carb bent, because quite frankly, that's been my experience. Yeah. So I mean, do you feel like there's any credence to the science that's being put out? I know during the Ancestral Health Symposium, we were all tweeting, and you weren't there, but you were commenting on the tweets and things that were coming through. And do you acknowledge that there is science there to support the ideas that people like me are putting out there?
Sure. But here's the thing, Jimmy. I'm almost sick of science anymore. I rarely read the studies anymore, just because they just are such a drag. Yeah. It's like every one study that somebody puts out, there's a counter study, 1,000 counter studies for it. So it's just like it's excuse my French, it's just a bunch of, and I get tired of it. I'm so burnt out on it. That's why I've kind of. I've really mellowed out on the tweets and, a lot of blog commenting and stuff, because I just don't care anymore.
Well, part of the problem is studies are looked at as all the same when they're not even close to being the same. If it's a clinical trial, it's a lot different than an epidemiological study, and most studies tend to be the ones that are just observational rather than clinical.
Yeah.
And yet they're all treated the same way.
Exactly. It's peer reviewed and published, so it's it's the gospel. Yeah. And I just don't buy that anymore. I don't know. I'm so done with the diet wars, and I just don't see any point to it. Well, and then it comes back to kind of the individualism thing.
Right.
I don't know if we're that individual, but there's definitely some kind of guidelines that we fit in as humans that that we can work with. I'm trying to actually kind of write a book, but
well, I was going to ask you about that because it seems like you've kind of gone through this journey of trying everything. And so you come at it from a different perspective, because not many people have said they've gone from high-fat, low-carb paleo all the way to banana, papaya, and date eating.
0 carb to 95% carbs.
There you go. That's right.
Yep. All in the span of, like 2.5 years or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and, I gave plenty of time to adapt to the fats and all that kind of stuff. I was paleo I was pretty strict paleo, I think, for like 13 months. I think I've written it down somewhere. Yeah. And, I dabbled heavily in it for another 6 months on top of that. So it was the better part of 18, 19 months probably. And then, the shortest time was probably when I was 100% raw vegan. And I just don't really care about being 100% raw vegan. So once I kind of was done with my thing, I think New Year's is where I ended that. I think I had a burrito, a place called Muchas Gracias. that ended my 6-month raw streak right there.
Yeah. Wow.
Love my burritos.
So you mentioned that you're tired of the diet wars, as am I. I mean, people say, oh, you're the low-carb guy. You're out there living La Vida low-carb show. You must all be for people all eating low-carb. And I have never, ever said everybody in the world should be eating a low-carb diet. But certainly for people who are metabolically damaged in some form or fashion, they need to do something different than the norm. Yeah. Because unfortunately, even the dietary guidelines that come down from our government aren't even close to the diet you or I, either one, are eating.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you and I get off track a little bit. Okay. Is I don't think that low carb is the only solution for a lot of those things like diabetes and stuff like that. I think there's enough science from other people, for example, the vegan doctors, the vegan doctor squad or whatever they call it, right, that are treating those diseases and stuff without low carb diets, and quite opposite really, and like in Denise Minger's posts and stuff where she talks about, is it the veganism that's doing it, or is it the cutting out of the crap food?
That's right.
And I'm totally on board with her with that.
Me too.
I think the veganism can be a tool, just like the low carb can be a tool. And, maybe it's short periods of time where those have to be, very strict, the Esselstyn's program or whatever, where he's really rigid on what he wants you to do. Maybe that's needed really strictly in certain periods of time for people to help them recover from these diseases. But yeah, I'm not totally on board with low carb needing, unless maybe you're on epilepsy or something like that.
Well, and that's a good point too, because there's a lot of research about epilepsy and low carb diets, and especially ketogenic diets, which go beyond just being low carb. They're extremely high in fat too. But I think the point is there are options available. If you want to choose Neil Barnard's diabetes program, by golly, do it if you think it's going to work for you and you think it's going to
get rid of your diabetes.
Well, and that too, but be sustainable for you, because no diet's good unless you can do it.
Yeah,
and if you can't do it, then it's just not worth doing. And so for a lot of people who try low carb, they're like, hey, this fits within the foods I like, and I can make the health improvements that I want to see happen eating this way. Then by golly, that person should eat it. And the thing that drives me really nuts about it is we're so closed to any different ideas than the norm. Yeah. So that's where these dietary guidelines kind of get nerve-wracking, is because they totally ignore some people might happen to do better on a low-carb diet. Some people might happen to do better eating 30 papayas a day. So why don't we acknowledge those differences, put both of them out there simultaneously and say, choose?
Yeah, exactly. And, then at the same time, it's everybody likes to kind of have a label. Yeah. And so they kind of jump on board one way or another, and then they take it too far usually.
Well, and that's the journey,
and
though.
I'm guilty of that.
That's their journey. I mean, you've been on this journey yourself. Exactly. And I think having people like this show, for example, that people can find information about low carb, that's important for those people who need to find low carb. If low carb's not right for you, go on to Live in La Vida vegan, Live in La Vida whatever, and find the one that will be right for you. And I think, we shouldn't be so closed-minded that we shut off people just because they disagree with our particular personal point of view, which is why you're on this show today, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
I am totally open to hearing all kinds of people, and I think it's valuable to hear from people that differ from you, because that in turn makes you think about what you believe and why you believe it.
Yeah. And, I'm going to say something here that'll probably have people turn off your podcast, but, Durian Rider is kind of a buddy of mine. And that's when I listened to his podcast with you. He really didn't know the other side as much as he probably should have.
Right.
I can understand that because it really isn't an interest of his, but I have seen all those low carb studies. I promoted the hell out of all those low carb studies. I was there. I was low carb, paleo, Mr. Dogma. I was in that for quite a while. And, just once I came out of my comfort zone and did, try something at the complete extreme, the other end, it really kind of opened my eyes to what else could be out there and that things could be changed, And so after that, since then, I don't care what it is. I think I told Hank, if I ate dog poop and it made me feel better, I would eat it, because I don't care anymore what the food is, what the science says about it. If it makes me feel good and I can do what I want to do, that's what I'm going to eat. Bottom line.
Well, and there's merit to, especially with real food, just eat the darn stuff and not worry about, my wife sometimes will kind of get a little bit more fanatical about this than I am even, where she'll say, I can't have that because that's not, paleo low carb. I'm like, eat it, honey. It's real food, and it's not like it's going to hurt you. What's that?
It's like it's a piece of watermelon. Just eat it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not the end of the world. Now, obviously, if you have diabetes, that's not going to apply. You need to be on whatever regimen your doctor or whatever plan you're following to control that. That's a different whole set of circumstances. But under healthy circumstances, if you're a healthy person and everything's working fine, don't fret about, like you said, a piece of watermelon or anything like that. If it's real food, obviously you don't want to be like ding-donging on or ho-hos or Little Debbie snack cakes or anything.
And there's something I do want to get into a little bit, I guess, here is that, when it comes down to real food, there are different times for different things, so you don't want to eat a bunch of bacon and eggs and then go slam down a bunch of bananas and stuff. And then, wonder why you gained weight. The carbs drive the fat.
Right.
That's why everybody's scared of the carbs. So, if you want to eat bananas, just eat bananas for breakfast. Okay. If you want to eat bacon and eggs, don't eat bananas for breakfast with that. It's just keep it out. You keep those separate times, separate meals. And that's more for, I guess, the metabolically deranged people. If you're, a skinny person that can't ever gain weight or anything, that really doesn't apply to you. But, so I really like to try and tell people that, if you're going to eat either a higher carb, lower fat, or eat higher fat, lower carb, you don't really mix the two. If you have had problems maybe in the past, like, you or I with a whole bunch of weight gain and, so it's just, it's not complicated. It just, you just have to use some sense.
Well, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't have common sense when it comes to this because there's so many different voices out there saying this and that and everything, and people get confused. And I think that's where people get into trouble. And I'm so glad you brought up, don't mix, a high fat with high carb. And you kind of have to balance and be high carb, low fat, or low carb, high fat, or high carb, low fat, because those go together. And I love that you brought that out.
There's probably a ratio somewhere in there that's the happy ratio. Maybe it's, any lower, 70% carbs or higher or whatever might be kind of the, who knows what that ratio is. I haven't figured that out yet, but there's probably some median in there where carbs are going to cause you to start gaining the fat, or the fat is going to start having you gain the fat, when you're eating like a certain amount. Like when I was doing 80-10-10, the fruit thing,
Yeah.
I was right before I moved to Arizona. I was under a lot of stress, and the avocados were tasting real good, and so I was eating quite a few of those. And I did gain some weight. I gained it wasn't much considering the calorie consumption but maybe 8 pounds or something like that. And that's just because I had raised my fat intake, and it was probably higher than 10% or whatever. And I did put on some weight, but after that, when I cut those avocados back out, it just came right back off again. Yeah. It was. So, I mean, it's going to be different for everybody, where that, threshold is or whatever. But so I don't know. And the thing that I run into and why I stay a little bit kind of controversial with my comments and things like that is because I see these people that say, oh, the carbs, if I put the carbs back in, they make me fat. Well, they never stop the fat intake on the other end. They throw the carbs back in there, and then when this fat gain magically happens, it's like, oh, it was the carbs that did it. No, it wasn't. You didn't make the adjustments needed to get that fat loss to come off, So it's just, it makes me crazy sometimes because the weight loss really isn't hard. It's easy.
Tell me how it's easy. What can people do to easily lose weight?
Any diet works.
Okay.
First off, you need to find the diet that's going to work for you. Like you said, right. I mean, if eating nothing but, grapefruit diets or whatever, something like that isn't going to be sustainable. So you need to find where you can eat happily and not stress about it, and it'll come off. I mean, it's like for me, I guess that's a super high carb diet. For you, I guess that's, eating a low carb. I don't know. You have to figure that out for yourself, but I don't really think that the weight loss thing is that hard once you have a healthy relationship with food. Maybe getting, ripped, super lean. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a ripped, super lean guy. And the reason being is I eat too damn much at night. About 50% of my calories come from at night, right before I go to bed pretty much. And I know that, and I'm not going to be lean until I stop that. So it's just a compromise for me. I don't know.
When it's something you choose to do because it makes you happy.
Yeah, exactly. I feel better. I sleep better if I eat lots at night, and I'm not gonna be ripped lean until I quit doing that. So maybe I'll start doing that before some big athletic event or something where I need to lean out. But right now, it really doesn't matter, and it makes me happy, and it keeps me training and all that kind of stuff. So whatever, I don't care.
So one thing we haven't talked about yet is your training. You do have a passion for, you told me, ultra distance endurance.
Yeah.
Are you a bike rider and a runner, or just the bike rider?
I guess I would be considered a triathlete, but I don't compete in triathlons because I really don't care about the competition part.
Right.
But I do run, bike, swim, and a lot of the time I do that every day. Sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'll take off on the bike and I'll do 25 or 30 miles on the bike, stop at the ocean, swim, anywhere from a mile to 3 miles or whatever, and then ride the bike home, eat, and then go for a run, anywhere from, 2 to 10 miles. I don't know. Just depends. I train on how I feel. If I'm not really feeling, the 100% chipper that day, I'll just back off. And, like lately, just been under a whole bunch of stress and work stress and stuff. And so it's just like I just go out for 2 mile runs at night instead of 6,
right.
Or whatever.
Right.
So I just don't push myself because, those high cortisol levels and burning yourself out and burning out your adrenals and stuff's not good either. And you hold on to the fat doing that.
Tell me about it.
I'm definitely guilty of overtraining.
Right.
Like, for example, this is why I don't necessarily think that high carbs are just needed for endurance athletes, because almost the entire last month, I haven't hardly worked out at all. And I bike commute, but that is exercise, but it was only a couple miles a day sometimes. I was working out, my total exercise logged was 2 hours for the entire week. And that was just riding to the grocery store to buy more food.
Right.
So, and I was still eating, 4,000 calories a day, upwards of almost 1,000 carbs. And I didn't gain anything. As a matter of fact, I believe I got leaner because I was coming from a month and a half of overtraining. I'm still not in good enough shape to train 20 plus hours a week, which is what I was doing I would probably do a lot better at 15 hours a week. But since I do it. And once I stopped, I mean, my body fat, I mean, you can see the changes in the mirror after the weeks. I was getting more muscle definition and stuff, and I wasn't exercising. And I was just eating whatever, as much crap as I wanted. What I did is I would just eat it, and I don't like counting calories, but sometimes I'm curious to know what I am eating, because I'm like, well, I need, 4,000 or 5,000 calories. I don't feel very well. And so I was like, am I really eating enough? And so I put it in there, in my log. And when it comes out, it's almost always 4,000 calories a day. So and then when I'm exercising a lot, I eat more than that.
Well, and perhaps your body has gotten used to that way of eating now, to the point that it just functions well on that. And I think there's merit to that theory, that whatever diet you have been on and have conditioned your body on, your body adjusts to it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes down to, you're just burning sugar and you're just burning carbs. And I got to call on that too, because if I want, I can go out and I train above 60 or 70% most of the time, which, guys like Mark Sisson say isn't good. And I pretty much agree with him on that. But, if I go out and I ride my bike for 3 hours at a 60% heart rate, I don't need to fuel on carbs. I don't bonk out because I'm not working hard enough to bonk out. So I'll have, maybe a little bit of Gatorade or something with me, which is my one kind of non-paleo thing. Right. And I use it for the salts, because I actually got hyponatremia from drinking too much during my exercise. So I've been including a little bit of sodium back in my diet just so I don't have that problem ever again.
Right.
So I'll ride my bike for 3 hours at a 60% heart rate and have 20 carbohydrates of Gatorade after, like the first 2 hours.
Yeah.
And I'm not bonking out. So, I mean, it kind of throws the whole, you're only accustomed to burning fat. If you're a fat adapted, I just don't buy it anymore. I'm sorry.
No, that's cool. That's cool. So do you still consider yourself paleo?
I kind of can't the last couple months because I've been eating so much rice.
Yeah.
And rice, like I said, I'm constantly testing. I don't really care if I am paleo. Yeah, I think it's a very, very good guideline to start with.
A lot of paleo people eat rice.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think it is a paleo food, but at the same time, I don't think it's an unhealthful food. That's why I was really happy when they named it the Ancestral Health Symposium.
Yeah. Versus
the paleo gangbang or whatever,
Right. Anyway. So Don Matus would say that you are still paleo.
Yeah. And I would like to still consider myself that, but the rice is really convenient. I always ferment it. I still do beans every great blue moon. And the other day I didn't ferment my beans. I usually do 12 to 24 hours before I eat them, soak them.
Yep.
And then I didn't do that the other day. I just decided, it didn't make that big a difference. I want some beans. So I boiled them for like 3 hours or whatever and got them nice and soft. And I struggled that night with it. It does make a difference when you soak them. And so if I'm going to go kind of like off of the paleo standard, I try and traditionally prepare those foods so that, you're eating the way you're supposed to.
Yeah.
I was talking to my neighbors, the traditional Mexican diets, and they're soaking their corns and, doing all this stuff and soaking their beans for 2 days and things like that. That they did that for a reason. They did it because it worked. And so I always soak my rice and all that kind of stuff before I eat it. So it's not paleo, but it is very traditional in the way that I eat those more Neolithic type foods.
Right.
But I don't stress out about it. When I'm going to the burrito place with my brother who's visiting from thousands of miles away, I don't, hey, you ferment those beans first, is that sprouted tortilla? I don't worry about that. I say, give me the biggest damn thing on your menu and add some extra to it.
You won't be feeding me any grain-fed beef, will you?
Yeah, exactly. I still get, when I go out to eat and stuff, I still, like, especially when it comes to junkier food, I try and do more of a vegetarian type thing because, there are a lot of, bad oils and stuff that are used in these foods. And so,
Yep.
And grain-fed beefs and I think that probably eating more kind of on the vegetarian side when you go out probably minimizes some of that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they're still going to, fry things in corn and canola oils and all that stuff, but I don't know. That's just my little that's what makes me feel better about it.
Sure.
But like I said, it doesn't happen very often. I haven't had, any like a junk food burrito since, I don't know, whenever my family last visited. It was like 2 months ago. So,
right.
So it doesn't happen every day by any means, but
his name is Tim. What's that?
I had fun with my family while they were here, and that was better than, trying to be some dogmatist and not have fun with them. And, I can only eat my bananas or, whatever.
Right. His name is Castle Grok. Obviously, that's not his real name, but that's what he's going to go by. It's what he has on his website. Visit his website, couch2ultra, ultra.com, if you want to learn more about the work that he's doing at his Chronicles of a Modern Caveman blog. Well, Castle Grok, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Living La Vida Low Carb Show.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on and keeping it civil, all right?
Always, brother, always.
And I don't have to stab you with a banana this time.
No banana murders here, so.
Yeah.